In a land transformed by mutations and beasts, Lin Cheng carried a secret. He reincarnated as a baby and gained a cheat system that made him a genius. At 8 years old, he is a hidden prodigy, training in secret to survive in a dangerous world. But his double life was put at risk because of a mysterious pendant and a beautiful gothic girl. Everything begins in the city of Shanghai. A woman is breastfeeding her son, saying that he's very lucky after all. His life is all about eating and sleeping, and her wish is that this little citizen can grow up very healthy, because that's his only duty. The little boy is drinking milk and gaining energy with each sip. He is reincarnated and is now a toddler who needs to strengthen his body. His name is Lin, and he's 33 days old, and he's a completely ordinary existence. However, he learns very quickly. At 3 months old, he could already kick his legs, which made his parents very excited. In fact, that was his first task from the system, and now he feels his strength increasing. Our boy just didn't understand this talk about genetics that his parents mentioned. It seems this world is a bit different from what he's used to. At 4 months, he could already crawl and even startled his parents with these absurd abilities. At just 5 months old, he was able to balance his gigantic head on his tiny feet, learning how to walk. At 6 months, he could already sit like a functional person and even watch television. During one of these moments, he learned about what happens in this world. Apparently, some people alter their genetics, becoming cyborgs or even monstrous creatures. One of the details of this world is that there are mutant beasts that need to be hunted, and to fight them, humanity had to choose between two paths. The first path is mechanical ascension, using technology to modify their bodies and fight the beasts. The second path is an advanced form of genetic modification that mixes human qualities with the abilities of beasts, developing magic and other powers. Fortunately, our protagonist has his own system. He can grow safely and evolve. While thinking about his life, a girl came to visit his parents, and by listening to their conversation, our protagonist learned that she's the neighbor from the apartment next door. She also introduced her husband and their little daughter, who seems to be the same age as our boy. She actually became his first friend in this world, though back then he didn't know their fates would become even more entwined. Our boy is truly a little ninja. He can already do incredible things for someone who can't even wipe his own butt. He does all this to complete the system's tasks. At 8 months old, he was already training. After all, in today's world, he might never get to retire, so it's good to start early. One of his precautions is to avoid doing this kind of training in front of his parents, as it could be misinterpreted. Perhaps his mother caught him once, but he quickly pretended to be asleep. Days later, something very surprising happened. While his mother was bathing him, she noticed he had great abdominal muscles. His father, seeing this, started to wonder, after all, the boy eats like a horse and has the muscles of an adult man. The only logical conclusion is that their son must be some kind of prodigy. Very excited, he began imagining the wonderful future the boy will have. The truth is, our boy isn't the only one on this land with genetic privileges. Another little boy shown on TV can lift an absurd weight for his age. His mother believes he must also be privileged somehow and is cheering for her son to shine even more than the others. All this encouragement left our protagonist very motivated. At 2 years old, he could already lift the same weight as that boy on TV, proof that his progress is truly impressive. But his training was interrupted because his little friend had come over to play. The boy immediately cleaned off some of his training clothes and was surprised to see his neighbor, who even brought a dessert to share with him. Even though they are friends, she still talks like a child, while our boy is already a full Sigma. Since she needs to sleep a lot, he uses her weight to do push-ups. Unfortunately, this type of exercise has its risks. Often while sleeping, his friend ends up peeing, which soils his clothes too. At 3 years old, the boy can already lift 40 kilograms with one hand. He is truly a beast. A caged one. Watching television, he saw that 4-year-old prodigies can only lift 30 kilograms. What he doesn't understand looking at the system is that his biological level is still locked at Category 1. With many questions, he decided to step outside his house for the first time in his life, witnessing a wide variety of people. It seems that the only normal ones are those introduced to the main plot of this story. The rest are truly bizarre. Going to a bookstore, our boy started running, and his mother tried to take him to the children's section. But our boy wants advanced knowledge. After all, he's a genius. He needs access to these books to understand this strange world even better. And according to those writings, there are 6 biological levels: common, advanced, rare, epic, legendary, and mythical. Each of these levels also has its own divisions, which is really complicated. Our protagonist realized he needs to dedicate himself even more to his progress if he wants to survive. Thanks to his reading habit, he's also developing proficiency in other fundamental human traits. At 4 years old, the boy would simply do sit-ups while reading his books, truly obsessed. Finally, he started going to school. At that time, he could already lift 80 kilograms with one hand. After all, the boy is an animal. With great power also comes great responsibility. His childhood friend is being bullied by other kids because she still wets the bed. What those foolish 4-year-olds don't know is that there's an animal among them. Showing his power, our boy made it clear who the dominant child in that classroom is, making it very clear that anyone who bullies his friend will have to deal with him. After being intimidated, those kids started crying while our protagonist's friend looked at him in deep admiration. Thanks to this intimidation, our boy received a title, he is the king of kindergarten. 6 months later, he completed the reading task and obtained the celestial root of wisdom. Time is passing very quickly. Our boy is now almost 7 years old, and one thing he hasn't stopped doing all this time is training. 200 kilograms mean nothing to him now, and his standing jumps surpass 2 meters in height. He's also very fast, covering 100 meters in just 8 seconds. Thanks to the help of the celestial root of wisdom, he can finish all tasks in record time. Finally, life in elementary school has begun for him. Our boy keeps being awarded because in every type of competition he enters, first place ends up being his. And all this time, he's still friends with that little girl, dedicating his free time to teaching her as well. She is not an exceptional person like him, but she is very dedicated and hardworking. Since our boy needs to keep pushing himself, he competes in everything, whether in studies or sports. One fine day, it was announced in his class that a transfer student would be arriving. Our boy could sense she was different because of her aura, which didn't seem human. And now everyone is going to meet the gray-haired girl. Honestly, I don't understand why the Chinese like people with gray hair at such a young age, but oh well. As expected, the gray-haired girl stood out among all those background characters, drawing everyone's attention. Even our protagonist's little friend said her hair was very beautiful, almost like snowflakes in winter. As the girl sat down, our protagonist thought he wasn't in the mood to answer his friend. In truth, he was very worried about the fact that the gray-haired girl had an aura that didn't resemble a human's. She might have had her genes altered, and that made our protagonist very intrigued. Since then, a few days had passed and she hadn't spoken to anyone. Sometimes when she fell asleep under her desk, her classmates would go there to take pictures. Indeed, everyone was very curious about her, but over time they got used to the presence of the girl who simply loved sleeping during class. Until one fine day, after a month, the calm was broken again. The body of this new classmate was overflowing with a strange liquid, and it seemed to have a very odd smell. Everyone was disgusted by her because that weird sweat was truly gross. One of the classmates even thought it would be a good idea to pour a bottle of water over the girl's head. She was immediately overcome with rage, but she had to endure the provocation, feeling completely powerless. After that, all of her classmates started mocking her, which made our protagonist even more intrigued. Because of this, he decided he would take a stand. After all, up until now, the girl hadn't posed any danger to them, and he went straight to the idiot responsible for that stupid action. He gave him a single order. He had to completely dry the gray-haired girl's desk. Knowing he shouldn't provoke our protagonist, the idiot obeyed while practically soiling his pants in fear. Our protagonist knew this guy was a notorious jerk. Still, he obeyed, politely. After doing that, our boy told everyone who had been laughing at the gray-haired girl to come over and apologize to her, and the girls did so immediately as well. After all, there is one person who rules this classroom, and that person is our protagonist. Practically a little mafioso. After that, the gray-haired girl thanked our protagonist for stepping in, and his childhood friend told her not to worry about it. After all, they're good people. From that moment on, she decided to join them. In fact, whenever she brought a tasty snack to school, she made sure to share it with them. Until one day, the gray-haired girl revealed that yes, the smell of that liquid was very bad, and she wanted to know why they weren't disgusted. She said this because all of her life she had been persecuted and wasn't used to having friends. It was truly a very strange feeling. Surprised, our protagonist's neighbor told her that this wasn't a dream. It was reality. She said she would never be disgusted by someone unless it came from their character, and very kindly, she assured her they would be friends forever. After hearing that, the gray-haired girl hugged our protagonist's neighbor, deeply moved. After all, it seemed they were the first friends she had ever made. As a gesture of gratitude, she decided to give them something as well. Those fangs were from a sinister beast. She had received them as a gift from her mother last year, and now she was giving them to them. It was an unusual gift, but it ended up being accepted by our boy's neighbor, who was very excited about the fact that they would be friends forever. But one day, something unexpected happened. The gray-haired girl had to be transferred. Our protagonist saw her filling out the necessary paperwork for it. In another classroom, he also watched what was going on, and it seemed her time at the school would be kept highly confidential. That was when our boy realized there was really something strange about her, and from that day on, he never saw her again. She became just a memory from his childhood. Back at home, his mother was very tired. After all, she needed to write a new novel, and that was very hard work. Our boy had even learned ancient massage techniques thanks to the celestial root of knowledge. While he gave her a massage, his mother watched the television where prodigies were being shown performing incredible feats at just 10 years old. And our boy noticed that his rivals were already undergoing genetic interactions. Coming out of the bathroom, our protagonist's father said the prodigy from Kyoto was truly sensational. Apparently, they were trying to sell him as an influencer. It seemed our boy's father knew that guy's family very well, but our protagonist's mother didn't agree with the idea of turning her son into an experiment. Still watching the television, our protagonist noticed that the prodigy from Kyoto had increased his strength fiffold through genetic interaction, managing to lift 500 kilos, and Lin at 8 could already lift 300 kilos, which was almost the same as that guy. In other words, his potential was even greater than that of the prodigy. Right after that news, a breaking report came in. Beasts out of control were attacking the neighboring city. Through the few recordings they had, they managed to identify demonic rats. People were crying for help while being devoured. The creatures were truly cruel. In fact, government investigations concluded that the heretics were involved in this attack, which caused huge pressure from the media. This cult was an organization founded by traitors of humanity who became the lackeys of these murderous beasts. Our boy was relieved to have been born in a powerful and relatively stable country. Otherwise, things would be very complicated. While thinking about this, he heard a terrifying noise. Outside his building, it seemed something had broken the sound barrier. He immediately went there to see what happened, spotting several cyborg officers flying through the air with their gear. Our boy hoped nothing bad had happened. The next morning, he met his neighbor to go to school, and she arrived a bit late. Our boy noticed something curious about her. The fang of that beast she had received as a gift from the gray-haired girl began to shine brightly. Now our protagonist understood why he had felt a strange aura from that girl. Maybe it had been coming from this artifact. And the glow lasted only for a moment. As soon as it faded, they decided to ignore what had happened. However, these days were feeling quite exotic. On the way to school, our boy was thinking about what had happened. A red-haired woman, very well-shaped and with large attributes, said that those kids were very cute. Very interested in them, she asked if they were siblings. And apparently, our protagonist's friend hadn't learned from her parents that she shouldn't talk to strangers. She said they were just good childhood friends. And the red-haired woman said she was jealous that they were childhood friends, as she had wanted to have one too. Now she wanted to know if they were going to school alone, since they should be with their parents. Our protagonist immediately grabbed his friend by the arm and told her to stop talking, otherwise they might end up late for class. Despite that very unusual interaction, they managed to arrive at school, and our protagonist reminded his friend that she shouldn't talk to strangers. On their way back home that same day, they passed through a very sinister alley that was far too quiet. Our protagonist knew that neighborhood was going to be demolished next week, and that's why it was empty. And right there was the red-haired woman, suspicious. She seemed happy to have found the children. Our protagonist didn't know how they had been found since he had taken a different route to avoid this kind of encounter. He finally realized they had been followed. The red-haired woman said that in her apartment, she had lots of candy and invited the two of them to come play for a while. Behind her stood a very rude man saying they should stop stalling. He simply wanted to wipe the children out to take them away immediately. He couldn't wait to sell them off to make some money. Our protagonist immediately prepared for battle. He threw a powerful punch into the man's stomach, making him spit blood. The man was also hurled several meters away, leaving the red-haired woman stunned. Seeing what had just happened, she was sure of one thing. This was impossible. He shouldn't have been able to damage an adult man's body, and our protagonist showed that what goes around comes around. He struck the red-haired woman in the face with all of his strength. After that, he decided his fists weren't enough, so he picked up a brick. There were no cameras in that place, and now he was going to eliminate any kind of future problem. His only choice was to end these fools' lives. But before he could do that, an earthquake shook the city. Another one of those out-of-control beasts had appeared, and it was standing before our boy. Furious, the beast chose its first victim. It devoured half of the red-haired woman's body. Our protagonist realized this situation was too dangerous, so he ran to his childhood friend. Picking her up, he told her they had to get out of there. After all, that alley was no longer safe. While our boy was fleeing, an extremely well-built woman with large attributes was flying toward the battle in her armor. Our boy noticed there was a cyborg about to destroy the rat. It all happened incredibly fast. Charging her power, the extremely well-built woman decided to attack. She launched all of her weapons toward the creature. Several missiles were fired, and the rat could do nothing, except, of course, explode into pieces. The creature, poor thing, was writhing in agony as its skin was incinerated. And to this narrator's surprise, that attack wasn't enough to end its life. The creature tried to recover from the shockwaves, but the powerful cyborg appeared to slice its neck. Our protagonist watched all this later on television, realizing that the level of that fighter wasn't even very high. In fact, demonic rats are very challenging enemies. The adults are over 3 meters tall and can even grow beyond that in some cases. After having escaped alive, our boy realized he needed to train even more. Even though something so surprising had happened, life went on normally. He and his childhood friends celebrated his 9th birthday and even exchanged gifts. Thanks to his great wisdom, he crafted a wooden gift for her, which left the girl completely amazed. In the blink of an eye, they were already in the next stage of school and were growing taller and taller. His boy stayed very focused on his training and now did it every day, receiving tasks from the system and improving his abilities. Finally, after much effort, his biological level reached the 3rd category, and now he had impressive attributes, being able to lift 700 kilos with one hand. Back at home, he wanted to know how the prodigy from Kyoto was doing. In fact, there was a story about him. At 14 years old, by absorbing genes from mutant ants, he could lift 2 tons with ease, and our boy was becoming more and more eager to go through that kind of procedure too. Meanwhile, his school life was completely normal. He was one of the best students in the city, and every school wanted him. After transferring to a new school, he was greeted by all the important people, including the principal and the guidance counselor. One of the things that helped earn this treatment was his great athletic ability, and right then, he was going to play a short match with his childhood friend. She used her secret curveball technique against him, but our boy ended up being surprised. A jerk from that school noticed they were new and said that particular court was reserved for the important students. Newcomers like them weren't allowed there, yet they still tried to approach the girl, hoping to get her phone number. Showing he was jealous, our protagonist told them to back off. But the student who had been a jerk from the start made it clear he had gotten to that court first. Hearing this, our protagonist immediately pulled another ball from his pocket, saying that he was the one who made the rules. He hit the ball with all of his strength, using the racket, which should have been a tiny ball turned into a projectile. When it struck the jerk's racket, the impact completely destroyed it. Finally, those stupid students realized what they were doing, and now they apologized to our protagonist for being idiots, fleeing immediately afterward. Rumors about it spread through the school, and our protagonist and his friends stopped being bothered. Many years ago, our boy had already finished all the school content, and during class, he read the books that interested him. Even when he returned home, he continued studying diligently, learning new things. He wanted to do this to earn as many titles as possible during his school journey. A small side effect of this was that he ended up becoming a boy highly desired by all the girls. But he had no interest in any of them and kept supporting his childhood friend with great dedication. Finally, the school sports events arrived, and our boy truly had impressive records. There wasn't a single exercise that was difficult for him. He managed to dominate all categories of athletics. He did this while holding back as much as possible, so he wouldn't seem too overpowered. Right after that, he felt a new wave of power surge through his entire body. He unlocked a new title, the Lord of the School. Inside the school, our protagonist was having several reflections about life. For example, predators absorb the essence of what they consume, and now he wanted to know, what essence is that? And it seemed his thoughts were leading him toward an answer. Deciding to test a hypothesis, he asked his friend for the fang necklace for a moment, and she immediately handed it to him. As soon as he touched it, our boy felt something strange. He was able to devour with his ability the traits of the abyssal butterfly. And once he reaches 100%, he will gain a new ability. Now that he knows the name of this exotic beast, when he got home, he decided to do some research. Unfortunately, he couldn't find anything, and apparently, with his last title earned at school, he developed this ability. Now he needs to study even more about exotic beasts. Fortunately, he still has the necklace that contains the fang of that butterfly. Focusing on his ability, he absorbed another trace of that great butterfly, raising his progress to 2%. Unfortunately, it was still a very small amount of vital essence, and now he needed to find other objects from the same butterfly. The next day at school, he decided to strengthen his training even further. He chose to ride his bike, taking his friend on the back seat. On the way, someone ended up calling out to them. It was the school's martial arts teacher, who was quite impressed with our protagonist's athletic abilities. Truly excited about the prodigy, he asked him to join his classes too. After all, he had the potential to surpass even the best in that field. After giving the invitation, he said goodbye in a friendly way, telling him where to find the dojo. And our protagonist didn't even get the chance to refuse because that man was so kind. At night in his room again, the boy killed a mosquito with his hands. Ordinary creatures, when annihilated by him, don't awaken the predator trait he received. Only powerful creatures possess essence that can be devoured. Once again, our boy rode his bike, wanting to put his theory into practice, going to the market to see if they sold beast meat there. For that, he went to a very specific place in that city, and indeed, he found the ingredients he needed, but they were all already processed. He needed to touch the ingredients to absorb anything. That was when he heard a butcher announcing his products. That gave our boy a spark of hope. He had found fresh creature meat being sold. He told his friend to wait because he needed to take a look at those ingredients. His neighbor was definitely very confused, but our boy ignored that for the moment since he had finally found what he wanted. The truth was right before him. As soon as he touched that meat, his ability was immediately activated, and his neighbor, worried, wanted to know why he got so excited just from touching that meat. Now she wanted to know if he had become some kind of weirdo. Our protagonist said the sensation of fresh meat was very good, that she should try it too, but the girl refused the opportunity. Since they were already there, he decided he would buy a little bit to try at home. One small problem was that none of those cuts were cheap, so he tried to find something that would fit his budget, like that mysterious tentacle. His neighbor said it was too expensive, and he should ask his parents for permission to spend that much money. But our protagonist told her not to worry. After all, his mother had already ordered him to buy that ingredient, and since they were going to do something special that day, they should also invite the girl's family so they could celebrate together. Sharing is indeed very good, but our boy was eager to know how the vital essence absorption would go. After paying, he said goodbye to the cashier girl while thinking how expensive it really was. It was already nighttime and they were riding their bikes back home. But our protagonist was so anxious that he wanted to test his theory immediately, and he placed his hand on the creature's tentacle. Indeed, he managed to absorb traces of his vital energy, and now he was being strengthened by that energy. Our protagonist could visualize the complete creature, the shadow squid, but unfortunately, his progress was small. After sampling a bit of that energy, our boy refocused on the road. He had only reached 0.1% of that creature. By his calculations, he would need to spend 100,000 Korean won to get to 100%. The squid's ability was to disappear inside water. If he could gain that power, the investment would be worth it. And this was the cheapest squid meat he could find. Now he needed to figure out how to get money. Our boy wasn't inclined to ask his parents. In fact, there was still a lot about vital energy absorption that he didn't know yet and needed to test. He didn't know if absorbing the essence would spoil the meat. From his immediate visual inspection, the ingredients still looked intact, which meant it could still be eaten. So our boy absorbed even more of the vital essence. Distracted, he didn't notice what was happening and his neighbor warned him there was someone in their way. Our boy almost ran over those people and apologized. He had been so focused on absorbing the vital essence that he had ignored his surroundings. But to their surprise, they saw their school teacher being targeted in a very dangerous attack. Several police officers were there and she was being held hostage in the situation. The officer on the scene warned his men not to shoot. After all, it could hit the innocent woman being used as a shield. They needed to think of an action plan, but everything they had at the moment wasn't very useful to stop that suspect. Our protagonist, standing nearby, decided to pick up a rock from the ground. He threw the rock at the violent man, hitting precisely the hand that held the knife to restrain the teacher. The police took the opportunity to act immediately, managing to capture the criminal while the teacher was being rescued by a woman with enormous balloons. Our boy's neighbor wanted to know what had happened with that rock, and our protagonist made it clear she should keep her mouth shut. But before they could flee, the captain told them to stop. He wanted to know if our boy had been the one who threw the rock. Lying shamelessly, he said no and took the opportunity to run off while being watched by the captain. The captain was sure the boy had been responsible for that heroic act and even had a reward ready for his courage. Our boy, who had extremely sharp senses, overheard this confession and immediately returned to the captain's presence. Now much less embarrassed, he said he had been the one who threw the rock. The truth was that he hoped to get a bit of money since he needed it. This ended up delaying his return home, but everything was cleared up by the police and the teacher. After all, our protagonist's act of bravery needed to be recognized. But something started going wrong with the body of that criminal. He transformed into a cursed creature, and the police realized he was one of the heretics. After transforming into a disgusting creature, he attacked the policewoman. The police immediately called for reinforcements, since a mutant rat was loose in the middle of the city. Officers were being eaten like little snacks, and the creature's skin was so thick that bullets couldn't harm it. Our boy immediately grabbed the owners of large balloons with his arms and used his agility to flee with them from that dangerous place. Thank God they weren't being followed, but they still needed to get to a safe location. Within seconds, above our boy's head, a cyborg woman flew past. She was heading straight into the eye of the storm, striking the monstrous creature with her blows. For the first time that night, the rat felt pain. Now the cyborg was going to fire her powerful laser, which came from the place where her balloons had been, though she no longer had them, since she was a cyborg. She fired her balloon laser toward the creature, which was completely annihilated, just like when Gohan destroyed Cell. Looking back, our protagonist was impressed by that display of power, and now relieved, he was also glad he hadn't lost his bike. After all, he couldn't afford to lose any money. But something else had happened there too. The meat he had bought had spoiled. Unfortunately, absorbing vital essence too intensely really does make the meat rot, and now our boy had to come up with an excuse. Throwing the ingredient on the ground, he claimed it was all the heretic's fault and the cyborg's attack had burned the meat and ruined it completely. Once again at peace, they went to the police car to get a ride home since it was already very late. What they didn't expect was that the criminal's body was there with them too, and the smell of burnt flesh was very strong. Only then did our boy remember he could absorb the vital energy from it. After all, it was still a body. Looking at that charred corpse, our protagonist wondered if there were many demonic rat genes left in it. There was only one way to find out. He brought his hand close to the corpse, realizing something was happening thanks to his ability. In that brief contact, he absorbed 5% of the mutant rat's genetics. Truly an impressive amount. Since he did it discreetly, the police officer thought he was just stretching and told him to stay quiet inside the vehicle. At the station, the captain wanted to know how our protagonist managed to throw that rock with such accuracy, since the place had been very poorly lit, and our boy answered that he trains his right hand very often. An awkward silence hung between them because indeed this boy must train his right hand a lot. Only then did our protagonist's family arrive to pick him up, very worried. His mother ran toward him, ready to comfort him. After hearing about the danger he had been in, she was desperate, but our protagonist assured her that he was fine. Still very emotional, she asked her son to promise he would run from danger if it ever happened again. After all, she wanted to see her boy grow up healthy and well. Even though she was very distressed, our protagonist assured her he wouldn't worry her again. After all, he would protect himself. Leaving the station, our boy overheard some policewomen saying that the heretic cult was getting bigger and was infiltrating universities, looking for new students as targets. They needed to purge society of these people, and what had happened that night was just a symptom, not the root of the real problem. They needed to hunt and eliminate the self-proclaimed Rat King. Checking his phone, our protagonist found it easy to get information about this cult. Their base was in this city and most of their members were people marginalized by society. And now our boy had an idea of what to do. However, while reading that information, he found something even more interesting. The Rat King wanted to evolve into a higher form of life. That's why he was making his followers gather materials for it. Shocked, our protagonist thought the Rat King might have developed consciousness. Looking out the car window, he ended up seeing a huge mouse much bigger than a cat. That was a little suspicious. Sighing deeply, he tried to forget what he had seen. Only then did he notice that his childhood friend was very quiet. It might have happened again. Whenever she got nervous, she ended up peeing. She'd done it since she was little. Our boy believed this ability might be connected to something they didn't yet understand. Arriving home, his mother was disappointed to learn that the meat he bought was no good. Our protagonist apologized, but because of the emergency, he had been careless. His mother sighed deeply and accepted his explanation. The most important thing was that he made it home safely. That left our protagonist relieved because he had managed to fool his mother. His father decided he would go back to the place where everything had happened to recover the meat, and our protagonist thought that was dangerous since the city was risky at night. Meanwhile, at the police station, smoking his cigarette, the captain was wondering how the young boy had managed to throw the rock with such power. Until his thoughts were interrupted by something. A monstrous rat had infiltrated the place. The creature lunged at him, and the policeman emptied his gun at the monster, making blood fly through the air. Back at school, our boy kept studying. Compared to the creatures he had encountered and those cyborg women, he was still very weak. Depending on the slow progress from school competitions was also complicated. He thought about becoming a digital influencer or even selling study materials, but that might be too much work. Only then did he realize he was thinking the wrong way. This world was completely different and martial competitions had truly interesting prizes, and now he would take a stand. In that day's physical education class, he was ready. The martial arts teacher was drinking his coffee and ended up being surprised by our protagonist's arrival. Clearly enthusiastic, he asked if the boy was there to learn more about martial techniques. Our protagonist wanted to join the team because he wanted to know if that would give him the chance to compete in the city tournament. The teacher assured him that he had a chance. In fact, the prizes were very interesting and could even be extremely valuable. So our boy was determined. From today on, he would belong to that martial arts team. The teacher immediately called all the students from his class to gather. He was going to introduce our boy and also asked everyone to introduce themselves to him, and the background characters did so very politely. Since our protagonist had no experience in martial arts, the teacher demonstrated some basic movements. He also said that it might look simple, but our boy might need some time to master them. Finally, our protagonist got into position to repeat what he had seen. Thanks to his abilities, he had a deep understanding of martial arts techniques just by watching them, and he managed to replicate those movements with great mastery, a perfect execution. The teacher, who witnessed it up close, thought that such progress was impossible. It was hard to explain how someone so young could learn so quickly. The only possible explanation was that he was a prodigy who only appears once every few thousand years. Back home, our protagonist found his mother, who was already preparing dinner that day, and our boy, who was a machine when it comes to eating, was ready to make his plate. In fact, his mother had managed to buy that squid meat again, preparing it especially for him. The smell of that dish was exceptional, and our boy was delighted. He finally got to taste it, and his mother wanted to know what he thought. As expected, her cooking was truly fantastic. The system notified that our boy had consumed the squid, and now his progress with it had increased, which surprised him. Now he didn't need to absorb it just with his hands. After dinner, he went to watch a bit of TV, seeing more prodigies being showcased. That girl was 14 years old, and when she activated the energy of her systems, she could lift 2 tons with one hand. She also ran 100 meters in 3 seconds, and her vertical jumps exceeded 8 meters. Indeed, compared to the prodigy from Kyoto, she was exceptional, and our boy was wondering how far cyborgs could really go. That same day, a tragedy was shared on the news. The police captain had died on duty, attacked by a mutant rat. Our protagonist wondered if it was one of those creatures he had seen that day, and now he needed to train even more. His 100-meter time was already under 5 seconds, and his vertical jumps nearly reached 6 meters. Plus, he could lift a ton with one hand. In addition to that, he was also training the martial arts moves he had been learning to get even stronger. The next morning, he returned to the gym intending to train even more, and his neighbor decided to join him. On the way there, they were approached by another girl who asked if they had already had breakfast. She said she had brought them fresh milk. Our boy appreciated the kindness but refused. Nearby, a jerk was feeling envious of our protagonist, completely overshadowed by his talent. He didn't stop him from getting to the gym, but he also didn't like what our protagonist had done to that beautiful woman, saying he must have hurt her feelings, and now he challenged our protagonist to a sparring match. The system gave our protagonist a special task. He had to defeat 1,000 different opponents and would earn the survival trait of the strongest. That made him quite happy. Since there would be a reward, he was willing to practice a bit with that background character. It didn't take long for the news to spread through the school, and some girls wanted to watch the match. In fact, several students gathered there, and the referee of the match would be the teacher. The girls were cheering for our protagonist. After all, they wanted to take many pictures of him doing those aggressive movements, showing all that youthful muscle tone. And the guy who would challenge our boy was feeling more and more like a beta because no one cared about him. As the underdog of the fight, he was determined to crush our boy's skull just to prove himself. Our protagonist said he needed to get back home. After all, he had to eat dinner, so he would make it quick. Believing victory was possible, the background character agreed they would make it a brief fight. Reminding them to be fair, the teacher started the match. The background character asked for a moment, interrupting the start. Since our boy had only been training for a few weeks, he was still a beginner in this technique, so the challenger would give him an advantage of 3 moves. Agreeing to this, the background character was soon caught off guard by our boy's sudden approach. He was already prepared to deliver the first blow, sending the poor background character flying several meters away with the impact. The poor guy hit the ground already unconscious and foaming at the mouth. Seeing that, the teacher was speechless. After all, a single strike had been enough to cause all that damage. Even the martial arts students were shocked at our boy's athletic ability, and his childhood friends celebrated that overwhelming victory, as did all the other excessively well-drawn girls with their ample balloons. The system notified our protagonist that he still had to defeat 999 fighters to earn that title, so he asked his classmates if they wanted to take the opportunity to practice with him too. But after that display of absolute strength, none of them had the courage, and since they didn't want to admit their fear, they came up with excuses, saying they had to leave. A short time later, the jerk who had been defeated stood back up, believing he had been caught off guard by a surprise attack. The teacher told the boy he needed to accept his own defeat, but the truth was that he also wanted to see the match again, because he didn't know if it had been luck or pure strength. So he called over one of his students who was about to leave. Obeying the martial arts teacher, the boy apologized to our protagonist while thinking he wouldn't want to end up like the jerk. 10 minutes later, our protagonist had lined up all his classmates, but his progress hadn't increased after that practice, which was a bit suspicious. The teacher, on the other hand, was very enthusiastic about this genius's talent. In just 1 month, he had grown at an astonishing rate. With the regional championship coming up that year, the school would probably take first place thanks to him. And our protagonist remembered that the competition could help his progress. All he needed to do was defeat his opponents in a fair competition. Thinking about that, the jerk called out to him once more. He said he accepted his defeat and would never speak to our protagonist again, even if he decided to poop on his head. That part was completely unnecessary for everyone present there. They quickly decided to abandon that weirdo because he said very strange things. Thanks to this completely different world, martial arts were highly valued. Wanting to keep her friend company, his childhood friend decided to train as well. Every day she practiced the same moves, intending to perfect her technique. They also did physical conditioning with sit-ups and push-ups. After every training session, our boy gave his friend a massage. Since his physique was much more developed, he could do advanced movements exhaustively. Lin did all this intending to become better and better, and finally the day of the tournament had arrived. The time for true violence. Everything is already set up in the city gym. Watching the fights, a bald guy noticed they were paired with the toughest competitors. The students know their opponents can run 100 meters in under 9 seconds. That's when a brave young man stepped forward. He wanted to be the first. It's our protagonist, and he's 100% motivated. Faced with this, the teacher didn't question him, confirming the young man would kick off the competition. The teacher's enthusiasm is immense, and he hopes the boy can secure at least one victory. On the other side, his opponent appeared. He is simply a mountain of muscle. This guy, who clearly isn't afraid of needles and must love his trebolum, seemed visibly unimpressed. After all, our protagonist is just an ordinary guy. Trying to intimidate him, he said that this competition isn't for people shorter than 5'7". And now he's going to show him what true power means. The duel between them is about to begin. The great mountain of muscle moves with surprising agility. He tries to hit our boy, but his strike hits nothing but air. Our protagonist very carefully landed just the palm of his hand on the mountain of muscle's chest. That was more than enough to send him flying as if he were a sack of potatoes. Completely stunned, there's only one thing the referee can do now: declare the victory of our dear Lin. Seeing this, our boy's friend is cheering enthusiastically, and all his classmates celebrate too. After all, that victory was insane. Backstage, the opposing team's coach is trying to correct his athlete, who neglected his footwork and attacked his opponent like a fool. Thanks to that victory, our boy's ranking began to climb, which is very promising. What he doesn't know is that the other team's coach is preparing a specific student to defeat him. Unlike the mountain of muscle, this guy looks like a completely generic background character, and he's almost bald. The duel is about to start once again. The slender background character tries to hit our boy with a kick, but just like his predecessor, he missed and was hit by an open palm strike. He was sent flying as if he were made of cotton. He falls out of the arena completely defeated, but unlike his muscular teammate, his body was weak, and he had to be taken straight to the hospital. The crowd is now completely surprised. They never imagined that these students from Shanghai could put up any kind of resistance, and the rival school's coach is utterly desperate. At this rate, they won't be able to win. Now he has to depend on Gao Fei, who will be the next to fight. The guy with the slightly better drawn hair must be powerful. After all, he's the least generic-looking background character so far. After watching our protagonist's matches, this guy believes he relies solely on technique and tricks to win. The crowd knows this guy well. He's number 1 at his school and has impressive stats. The duel between them will start now. In the blink of an eye, he managed to get close to our protagonist, pressuring him with a very fast barrage of blows. The opposing coach is the one getting desperate, as he expected Go Fei to be a little smarter. But in the heat of battle, the smug background character believes he's a genius and doesn't need to worry about defense. However, he soon realized that after throwing a million punches, he hadn't landed a single one. Tired, he asked our protagonist how he was able to dodge his attacks so easily. Faced with a proud response, he became completely enraged and decided to attack some more. Our protagonist was already bored. This attack was too repetitive, and he decided to end it with a kick. The crowd was once again deeply perplexed, as our protagonist won all his battles, much to the delight of his companions, doing all this without breaking a single drop of sweat, and he continued to advance through the competition, taking down all of his opponents. There was no one who could withstand a single blow from him. Our boy hands out beatdowns as if Santa Claus were giving out presents. It wasn't long before he and his team won the grand prize, but he still needs to defeat 100 opponents, and all he managed that day was a count of 16 competitors. However, life smiled on him in other ways. Our boy received a prize of 20,000 coins, which is quite interesting. Adding up all the prizes he had won so far, he reached a total of 30,000 coins. Unfortunately, this money won't last long as our boy has an extremely refined palate. Back at home, he works hard to absorb all those nutrients. After all, it's essential for his progress. Still in his second year, he's already growing more and more powerful. His strength is simply immense. Time is passing very quickly, and his younger sister is also growing up healthy. Eventually, she'll need to get into a better school. She wasn't able to get into the same one as our boy. Although she is saddened, our protagonist shared that the principal will be paying him a visit, suggesting it might be productive. The girl is sure he's only going there to talk to her brother and has no interest in her potential. But our protagonist made it very clear that he has conditions for staying, and one of them is that his sister must be there too. As expected, the school's principal went to our boy's house and talked with him for several hours. She needed all that time to lay out her plans for the family. The principal wants our boy to remain a student at the institution and suggested he make any comments about what he had heard. Our boy thanked her for her consideration and said he hopes his sister can also stay at the school with him. As soon as she heard these words, the principal turned her attention to the girl, assuring them that when classes resume, they should both show up at the school, filling the family with great joy. All that's left for our protagonist is to finish the middle school competitions, which he won once again. With the prize money, he was able to fulfill another of his dreams. He's close to obtaining all the genes of that dark squid, and the meat he just bought should be enough. With no time to waste, he's absorbing all these genes, finally reaching the 100% mark. For achieving this, he gained a new attribute, the blessing of liquid affinity. It allows him to move freely without leaving a trace in aquatic environments. To our protagonist, that seems quite surprising. He immediately went to the nearest lake to test his new ability. His skin doesn't wrinkle from the excess moisture, and swimming has become much easier. Although it's a low-class monster, this is really interesting. However, our boy realized that to obtain better traits, he needs to consume more powerful creatures. He needs to become strong enough to fight mutant monsters to devour their flesh. In the last week of vacation, his family decided it would be nice to go to the beach to enjoy the time off. Our boy's sister found the water there quite cold. The boy said she would get used to the temperature soon, but the truth is, he was taking the opportunity to swim and test his abilities even further. Since his sister doesn't know how to swim, she asked him to teach her a few things, a fact our protagonist had almost forgotten. So he dedicated his time to teaching her with great patience. At least the basics. Showing great talent, the girl managed her first strokes without any difficulty. She continues to swim peacefully in the sea, and she's already able to dive by herself, which left our protagonist quite surprised. After doing that, the girl revealed that opening her eyes in the salt water didn't bother her. But what truly intrigues our protagonist is how she was able to learn so quickly. This isn't normal. That's when he realized what might have happened. Maybe his sister still wets the bed because she was born with an affinity for water. Perhaps she has a legendary constitution with affinities they are unaware of. The two continued to dive, and the girl's ability never ceased to amaze our protagonist. They are able to hold their breath for over 10 minutes, which is absurdly surprising. Once at the bottom of the sea, she saw something interesting. They are hearing a peculiar noise. Our protagonist has no idea what it could be, and before they could investigate, they decided to get out of there. The best decision they made was to return to the surface. Once off the beach, he went to his sister to find out what had caused her discomfort. She said she was hearing strange sounds in her ear, which started to make her feel distressed. She couldn't understand it, but it sounded a lot like some kind of language, and the voice seemed to be female, echoing endlessly in her ears. After she calmed down, our protagonist returned to the hotel, searching the internet for any useful information. Unable to sleep that day, he decided to return to his training. At his current level, he is strong enough to fight mutant rats without difficulty. And with that, he decided to return to the beach to test his strength once more. He can run and jump much higher. Lifting weights with a single hand isn't that hard either. After getting stronger during the vacation, classes had finally returned. As usual, the female background characters are quite impressed by our boy's good looks. What he didn't expect was that on the very first day, the system would give him another mission. He needs to complete cooperative tasks, 1,000 of them in total. On the way home that day, our boy decided to stop by the market. Since he had already consumed enough squid meat, he decided to look for something else that could be useful. And it didn't take long for his eyes to find a promising ingredient. That peculiar cut of meat belongs to a wild giant eagle. That's exactly what our boy decided to take home. This wild giant eagle is a slightly higher category monster. Its vision is exceptional, and it can see 30 times better than an ordinary human. Its predatory ability is top of the line. Nothing can escape its sight. With vision this powerful, it's worth it for our protagonist to strive for these genes, especially since the creature's meat isn't too expensive either. On the first try, he obtained 1% of what was needed. Doing some quick math, he figured out he'll need 200,000 to buy enough meat to progress. Knowing this, he'll have to work even harder to earn that money by winning tournaments. The first day of school is very conventional. The teachers introduce themselves to the students, and the students do the same, among them an exceptionally lovely girl. Another classmate also introduces herself. She likes to watch cartoons and cosplay. A background character makes his introduction, saying he likes to play video games. Until it was our boy's sister's turn. Surrounded by so many classmates, she became quite nervous. She told them she likes to draw and would like to be treated well from now on. Our boy's introduction was firm and confident, the briefest of them all. After all that, the class proceeded normally, and someone asked our boy's sister what her score was on the entrance exam. The person asking was a girl with brown hair. Our protagonist's sister said she only scored 709 points, which is 10 points higher than the score of the girl asked, who became excited about her new classmate. Continuing the conversation, the girl said she only got 95 points on the physical test, which is really sad. However, the physical score scale goes from 0 to 100, and our protagonist's sister didn't do so well. She only scored 79 points, which is below the minimum to be in the elite class. Excited, the girl kept asking questions, wanting to know if our protagonist's sister had a similar score. Very embarrassed, she said her score was a bit worse, and the girl kept insisting on getting the information, until someone firmly interrupted their dialogue. It was our protagonist who stepped in to change the subject, trying to protect his sister. He walked up and asked for the background character's phone number. His sister was very relieved by this intervention, as she didn't have to reveal her real score to her new classmate. Our protagonist continued adding the other students' contacts so they could communicate. That day, he made a group chat with 2 other classmates and his sister. By acting this way, he is progressing in the system's mission to complete cooperative tasks, something that was unexpected for him. His bald classmate comes from a family with a martial arts tradition, and he's highly ranked in the tournament, holding the 8th position in the city. The girl with pigtails comes from a rich family. They'd own a clothing store. It didn't take long for the 4 of them to become great friends. The bald guy asked them if they knew who the strongest student in their class was. The curly-haired girl is certain that Spot belongs to our protagonist. After all, he had the best score in the entire district, information that left the bald guy impressed. Hearing this, he revealed that there are 2 classmates in that room who spent a fortune to improve their potential. One of them is Wang, currently ranked 3rd on the entrance exam, able to run 100 meters in under 8 seconds. The other, equally intimidating, is named Gang. He has absurd brute strength, capable of lifting 300 kilograms with a single hand. The girls were impressed by these stats, while our protagonists sighed deeply. After all, they are weak. The class that day proceeded normally, and it was time for him to deepen his knowledge. Since our boy had been studying this since he was young, he used his free time to exercise his body even more. Unfortunately, cultists are still a problem in that city, and the police are trying to capture them. Outside, the students are having a practical lesson, and the teacher wants to know if any of them can produce fire. The bald guy was quick to tell the teacher that such an ability is completely useless. But his comment was immediately overshadowed by the efforts of his much more promising classmates who were trying to create fire. The teacher wanted to know how those students acquired its knowledge. Gang said he learned to do it back in middle school, while the blonde classmate learned on the internet. After that demonstration, all the other students tried to produce fire too, and our protagonist proved to be talented. The next day, the PE teacher was going to teach his students a breathing technique. The class is eager to learn this technique, and as ridiculous as it seemed, those 2 prodigies worked hard to master it, until our protagonist realized that a month had passed at the school. According to the students' rankings, they would receive a cash prize. Our protagonist was quite excited about this, as he appreciates the motivation of capitalism. Knowing about the monetary prize for that test, the entire class is determined to do their best. In other subjects, similar tests are taking place. All of them have rewards. Doing all of that in a single day is very exhausting for the students. Several of them are complaining. After all, none of those tests were easy. The two promising students, Wang and Gang, are confident that they are leading the rankings. The bald guy, overhearing their conversation, became very annoyed as his classmates sounded way too confident. Finally, the results of the first tests are about to be handed out. Some students are very happy with their results, including our boy's sister, but the class was impressed with the bald guy's performance, which was truly exceptional. With all that recognition, he truly felt like an elite student, eager to receive his cash prize. Next up, two other students had a tied score, Gang and Wan. They only got the last question wrong. Since it required a lot of calculations, they didn't have enough time to solve it. The one upset by this was our dear bald guy, who seems to be feeling jealous of his classmates. Faced with the complaints, the teacher acknowledged that the test was difficult, but that among them there was someone who managed to answer every question. As soon as those conceited students learned that our protagonist had a perfect score, they were left speechless. Even the bald guy is surprised, as our boy's performance has amazed everyone. It didn't take long for the young man to ask the teacher what would happen with the prize money. The teacher assured them it would be delivered personally in red envelopes. But honestly, he's surprised that our boy's real interest was the money. In the next class, more tests are handed back. As expected, some students did well, but the class as a whole didn't perform as they had hoped. Our protagonist's sister ended up in the top 5 for this subject, and our protagonist won another cash prize, which left his competitors completely speechless. They can't understand how someone got a perfect. The teacher made it clear that the warm-up would have 3 parts: a 100-meter dash, a one-handed weight lift, and a vertical jump. Our protagonist's scores in all these exercises are simply astronomical, but to avoid raising too much suspicion, he held back his true potential. Even so, it made no sense. The students who wanted to defeat him know they can't beat those scores. Trying to console each other, Gang and Wan believe there must still be a chance for victory. Finally, the practical part arrived, the simulated combat between students. Since our protagonist is exceptionally powerful, no one dared to challenge him. With no volunteers, the teacher ended up picking an unlucky soul. Now our boy is about to have his first fight in the test. Wanting to save time, he finished it with a single blow. And he did this with all of his opponents. There was no one who could beat him. With the boys, he used a closed fist. With his female classmates, a very open hand, if you know what I mean. After that display of power, there was nothing Wang could do. At that moment, our protagonist's bald friend approached them. He was in peak physical condition and fully warmed up, so he decided to challenge Wang. Claiming he would defeat him in 30 seconds, the brute accepted the challenge. The fight between them is about to begin. Our protagonist's bald friend tries to break through his opponent's defense with multiple strikes, but all he managed to do was get his leg caught, and like a rag doll, he is now being thrown through the air. It wasn't long before he was thrown out of the arena. The nausea and impact were so great that he had to throw up a little. Even so, Gang praised his opponent's physical resilience, while pointing out that no one in the class was stronger than him. And by doing so, he managed to capture the protagonist's attention. Gang is very confident. He believes no one there can defeat him, but knowing the danger our protagonist represents, he decided to attack first. He executes his move with great precision and technique, but it wasn't enough to hit our boy's body. He took that huge opportunity to strike his opponent from behind. Emerging victorious, he is acknowledged by his female classmates. Now that he has defeated Gang, it's time to face Wang, who entered the arena a bit apprehensively. Facing our protagonist, he feels like a tiny ant.